Oh boy, here we go. I remember when Sonic X was first announced. They were making Sonic into an anime, not counting the OVA. People were excited! It was the big anime boom era when anime was becoming mainstream in the USA. As Sega was entering the third-party business, well, they needed some hits. And Sonic was their big moneymaker, so expanding on him seemed like the most logical choice. I remember the first image of the Sonic anime was released, and it looked promising enough. But then we saw that they added a kid, because every anime has to have a kid appeal character. You ever see Transformers Headmasters? The focus on Daniel is insufferable. The kid's name is Chris Thorndike, who is arguably the most hated Sonic character in existence, and not for unjustified reasons, as we'll find. Sonic Team was personally involved in the production of this show. In fact, Yuji Naka even threw some shade at the DiC-made cartoons of the 90s by saying, "We like this one better because we were personally involved." Ego much, Naka. I hope you're enjoying Prison. At least this led to Ken Penders not getting to make his Sonic movie. The world mourns for that, Penders. It really does. Sonic X was run in Japan as a 52-episode anime, which is typically enough episodes for a year, which is how a lot of anime is made. A second season was later produced for an additional 26 episodes, but we're not there yet. I don't seem to remember hearing that the show did very well in Japan, but I do remember reading the Archie Comics Sonic 125, in which Yuji Naka penned a message to fans saying they were planning a worldwide release for the show. Of course, who would get the license for the show than 4Kids Entertainment, who, fresh off the hot success of the Pokemon anime, basically got every major anime of that time, and were well known for infamously butchering said shows with censorship, bad dialogue, some ill-fitting voices, and basically erasing any Japanese elements because they didn't want kids to know that most of these shows came from Japan. Kinda gross, really. For the record, I'm not going to go into 4Kids' changes too much unless it's a really drastic one. The show aired on Foxbox in America, which I saw as a bastardized version of Fox Kids. In fact, it didn't last too long, and by the end of the 2000s, the block was gone entirely. I actually remember that time they had American Idol regent William Hung host the block for a day, and I remember even Wayne Grayson, a voice actor for 4Kids, saying, "I'm just as thankful as you that William Hung nonsense is over." Yeah, I'm not making that up. The voice cast in the Japanese version of the show was the same as the games, but not in the English version. Though Ryan Drummond made an effort to do Sonic's voice for the show, 4Kids turned him down, and this eventually led to Sega replacing the English game cast with the Sonic X cast for the late 2000s, although that might have been due to Yuji Naka being petty, but that's another story. One thing you notice about 4Kids Productions was that the voice cast was very small. New York doesn't have the same pool of voice actors that Los Angeles does, so you were probably going to recognize most of the voices after a while. But hey, the 2003 TMNT show was pretty high quality compared to everything else on the block. The premise of Sonic X is that after a routine mission, Sonic and friends break into Dr. Eggman's base to save Cream and Cheese. The Chaos Emeralds end up teleporting everyone to our world. Fun fact, if you've played the games, you'd know Chaos controls a teleporting technique by the Emeralds. But 4Kids didn't do their research of the games too well. In fact, the head of the English dub even openly admitted he had no prior knowledge of the franchise. 4Kids actually thought Chaos Control was the name of Eggman's base. But yeah, basically Sonic and everyone end up in the real world. Sonic meets this 12-year-old rich kid, Chris Thorndike, and they have to rush to get the Chaos Emeralds before Eggman does. Sonic, Tails, Amy, and Cream live at Chris's house while Knuckles just wanders around on his own. So yeah, that's basically the premise of Sonic X. In fact, this is typically an episode. Chris and Sonic's friends, who are usually without Sonic, are doing something. Eggman shows up, causes trouble, Sonic arrives and saves the day. There you go. I guess real quick we'll talk about Chris's family. First, there's his grandfather Chuck, who I'm sure was based on Doc Brown from Back to the Future. He forms a bond with Tails due to their love of inventing things. Then there's Chris's busy parents. Chris holds a lot of resentment towards his parents because they are almost never around. Even though from what we see, Chris's parents do make an effort to be there when he needs them, even regretting when they have to leave, so I'm not really on Chris's side here. There's Tanaka, the butler who's also a samurai, and Ella, the maid. You'd think with a house this big they'd have multiple butlers and maids, but I guess not. Chris also has 3 friends at school, Danny, Francis, and Helen. And remember the last character, I'm going to point out something that really could have improved the show regarding her. Eggman has 3 robot helpers, Deeko, Boko, and Bokon, who remind me of Scratch Grounder and Coconuts from Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. Except those characters are actually funny. So Sonic and friends try to find the Dragon Balls or Chaos Emeralds before Eggman does. Chris also has a government agent who poses as his teacher because, I don't think this really amounts to anything. So one thing I want to point out about the early episodes is just how little Sonic shows up for a while. Usually he's either asleep or he's all the way across the world. Yet Chris thinks he and Sonic are best friends despite the fact that they barely interact. Why is this show even called Sonic X when he barely shows up? The first 13 episodes deal with the characters adjusting to the new world. Most of them don't seem to mind that they're stuck in a new world and seem okay with it. The only character who really has a personal reason to want to get back is Knuckles, since the Master Emerald is unguarded, and Cream because she wants to see her mother again. But Sonic, Tails, and Amy don't seem to care too much. I guess if Eggman gets the Chaos Emeralds and conquers the world, it won't be a good thing. But regardless, it doesn't really feel like there's many stakes throughout the first 26 episodes. Alright, I guess we'll talk a little bit about each episode.
Episode 1 is all about Sonic running around in a new world, and all seems fairly promising until Chris shows up at the end.
Episode 2, Sonic breaks into a facility wearing a DBZ Scouter the free cream and cheese. Because if there's any franchise Sonic loves ripping off, it's Dragon Ball. Episode 3, Eggman attacks and Amy and Knuckles are found. Then Episode 4, the first Chaos Emerald is found and Chris saves the day because of course Chris gets to be the one to save the day. Of the first 5 episodes, the only one that's particularly notable to me is the 5th episode, because in that episode Knuckles is again duped by Eggman into thinking Sonic is the enemy. Because for some reason Sonic Team seems to think that Knuckles always getting duped is funny, even though you'd think after one too many times that he'd realize that Eggman is not to be trusted. I did quite enjoy Sonic and Knuckles' fight in this episode as the two are rather evenly matched. Speaking of fights, let's talk about the fights of the show in general. A lot of the fights have no tension. You see, if Sonic is ever having a hard time, Tails just gives him a ring and that causes Sonic to one-shot whatever robot he's fighting. I know Sonic SatAM did something similar with its power ring, but that show at least found more creative ways to use the ring than just have Sonic beat a robot. In this show, all Sonic has to do is grab the ring and boom, he wins. It gets old very fast. Episode 6 is just bizarre. Eggman creates a robot to influence the kids to be on his side. The robot malfunctions, Sonic comes in and saves the day, yada yada yada. Really, just a pointless filler episode. Not even worth a thought. Episode 7 has the rest of Chris's family find out about Sonic and friends. Yeah, I guess we couldn't keep that a secret too long. Episode 8 is actually kind of fun because Sonic and Tails go into space on a mission, but we can't have good things because Chris has to get involved, which is annoying. And of course, he gets to be the one to save the day. Now the cover, episode 9. This is the episode that focuses on Amy and her feelings for Sonic. If there's anything this show did, it really teased Saw and Amy shippers, but it's all just that, teasing. Sega will never allow Sonic and Amy to be a couple, as they would lose their dynamic if they were. In fact, Amy is basically just here for Saw and Amy teasing. One of her key roles from the games is taken from her, and believe me, we'll get into that. Yet I can't help but feel someone making this show like these two together as they kept throwing in all these hints. Episode 10 is a baseball episode because it's basically an unwritten rule for every anime to have a baseball episode. Knuckles even points out that it's really stupid to play the game with Eggman since the stakes are too great, but everyone just calls him Chicken and forces him to play the game even though he actually made a perfectly good point. In fact, this kind of thing happens a lot. Some kind of problem occurs, Knuckles makes a perfectly good counterpoint, but everyone just treats him as though he's wrong. In fact, he's actually proven to be right since Eggman gets away with the Emerald, but hey, everyone had fun, right? Episode 11 is when Rouge makes her first proper appearance, and that's basically it to this episode. This arc ends with episodes 12 and 13. The government attacks Eggman's base, and Sonic and friends join in. I actually pointedly remember the dub changes one of Knuckles' lines. In the Japanese version, Rouge's government friend Topaz asks Knuckles if he's Sonic, to which he replies, "No, I'm not." But in the English version, she asks him if he's one of Sonic's friends, to which he replies, "We're not friends." Wow, now Knuckles is meant to have a respect for Sonic, but I guess 4 kids didn't know that. Regardless, Sonic fights Eggman, somehow getting the 2 Chaos Emeralds and goes into this quasi-supersonic form. Something that never comes up again, by the way. And it's never been a thing in the game, so make of that what you will. Eggman's base is destroyed and Sonic is cheered as a hero. So far, at least the plot has moved at a decent enough pace and it feels like things are progressing. So originally I was going to end the video here, but I changed my mind. Let's do the second half of Season 1 now. Episode 14 deals with the aftermath of Eggman's defeat. Some jerk aide wants Sonic to come to the White House to shake the hand of the president. But Sonic declines because he already promised he'd spend the day with Helen, a girl who is confined to a wheelchair. And though federal agents show up to try to take Sonic to the party, he decides to stay with Helen and give her the time of her life. I actually really enjoy this episode. It's the best side of Sonic showcased, and the idea of a character who can go anywhere in the world helping out someone who can't go anywhere due to their disability is a great concept. But all it does is make me question, why was this not the main focus of the show? Screw Chris, make Helen the main human lead. The type of situations and adventures and dramas practically writes itself if Helen's the lead. Most of Sonic X's problems could have been fixed if Helen was the lead human instead of Chris. Episode 15, Eggman comes back. That's pretty much all there is to this episode. It ends with Sonic sinking Eggman to the bottom of the sea because every bad guy has to have an underwater headquarters at some point. It's an unwritten rule in cartoons. Episode 16, Sonic and friends go on vacation and Chris tries to help Sonic deal with his swim weakness, even though the ideas are pretty stupid and don't make much practical sense. Generic fight breaks out over a Chaos Emerald. Once again, Sonic wins the fight by getting a ring. Typical. Episode 17 is a Knuckles-only episode. That's a nice change of pace. No Chris. Of course, this episode definitely highlights the censorship standards of Japan and America. Knuckles enters a bar and it's clearly meant to be selling alcohol, but that's a big no-no on kids' cartoons in America, so it's changed to generic Western food. Knuckles does get one of the Chaos Emeralds, and there's one particular change in the English version I'd like to talk about. In the Japanese version, a voice appears to Knuckles and says the servers are the 7 Chaos, which if you've played Sonic Adventure, you'll know is something they say in that game a lot. 4Kids changed to something vague about a mystery being revealed, but I'm guessing Sega got wind of this and blasted 4Kids for the screw-up as they quickly re-recorded it with the correct line. At least that's what I assume happened. Episode 18 has Sonic, Tails, and Chris in the wildlife. It's a basic wildlife should be preserved type of story. Though it follows the standard, Sonic doesn't show up until the end to save the day. At least we get a flashback to how Sonic and Tails met, and it's pretty true to the games. Episode 19 involves King Boom Boo from Sonic Adventure 2, and some rather freaky images appear on screen that always made my nose itch when I was a kid for some reason. Chris and Amy have to rescue everybody because of course we can't have an episode where Chris doesn't save the day in some fashion. Episode 20 has everyone on a cruise ship where Sonic goes crazy because he hates being around water, and why did anybody think this was a good idea? Sonic actually tries to trick Tails and Amy so he can get off the ship, which is a very dick move for the Hedgehog. Nothing of note really happens in the episode, it's basically just filler. Maybe if you like Ella going all ballistic and saving the day, you get something out of it, but I didn't personally. Episode 21 has Sonic race Sam Speed. I forgot to mention him, didn't I? Sonic ran faster than his car in the first episode, and he's been all jealous ever since. In fact, Sam goes out of his way to cheat during the race, but Sonic still wins easily and shows that he basically could have won from the very beginning, and I really like that moment because it's extremely Sonic. Episode 22, Cheese goes missing and the cast finds him in a child colony that's on Earth for some reason, which raises questions as to why it's on Earth and not Sonic's world, but they don't dwell on that too much. Sonic shows up and beats Eggman at the end, rinse and repeat, usual fashion. Episode 23 has Chris's parents' wedding anniversary. All the parties converge here and shenanigans ensue and ends with Eggman getting a Chaos Emerald. At least Chris's parents had fun. But Knuckles points out that Eggman got away with the Chaos Emerald because being a sourpuss is Knuckles' MO. Oh yeah, and Rouge is here too and points out that she doesn't have a single emerald. Yeah, why are you even here? Episode 24 is pretty heavy on the Saw and Amy ship teasing. Yeah, I know. Basically, Sonic gets something stuck in his ear, and this causes him to run constantly around the world, and everyone has to try to find a way to get him to stop. As someone who grew up with the D cartoons, I'm very happy that they made chili dogs Sonic's official favorite food. Eventually they stop Sonic, and all's well that ends well. Sonic and Amy get a tender moment in the hay. Now we've reached the end of this part of the saga, the 2-part finale where all the Chaos Emeralds are found. Chris is feeling depressed because while he wants to help Sonic and friends get home, he doesn't want to lose his new friends. Knuckles, however, wants to get back home because he has to protect the Master Emerald, so he makes a deal with Eggman to get all the emeralds because he is an idiot and still doesn't realize that Eggman is not to be trusted.
Chris decides to go along with it and takes the Chaos Emeralds they've collected. He doesn't tell anybody else that he's doing this for some reason because the plot depends on Chris and Knuckles being two complete idiots. Eggman's robot finds the last emerald, and he predictably double-crosses Knuckles and Chris and takes Chris hostage because he doesn't care which world he establishes the Eggman Empire on, and Chris and Knuckles were stupid enough to believe him. Oy vey. This leads into our finale. Eggman has his new robot fully powered by the Chaos Emeralds go on a rampage with Chris as his hostage. The robot is called the Egg Emperor in Japanese, and this actually aired in Japan a few months before Sonic Heroes was released, which also had a robot called Egg Emperor. Maybe it was a coincidence, I'm not really sure. Anyway, the English version calls it the Eggsterminator, and it beats the ever-loving crap out of Sonic, which is actually a little tough to watch, but it does get the point across. One little touch I noticed that's interesting is that even Eggman gets a little nervous at seeing Sonic get beat up, which shows that this is not intentional on his part. Eventually Sonic gets knocked into the ocean, and Chris goes ballistic, breaking free of his restraints and getting all the Chaos Emeralds. This would be much more impactful if Sonic and Chris had spent more time together. Chris acts like Sonic is the one who made him less lonely, even though Chris has never seemed all that lonely. In fact, let's go over this. Chris's parents may not always be around, but they do their best when they are. His grandfather, butler, and maid attend to his every need, and he has 3 friends at school who are never shown to be anything less than genuine, and yet we're supposed to believe that without Sonic his life would be meaningless when the two have barely interacted throughout the show. Sorry, show, you completely dropped the ball here, and since this is the big emotional climax, it's a huge problem. Anyway, through one reason or another, Chris is able to dump the Chaos Emeralds into the ocean, and Sonic emerges as a Super Saiyan, I mean Super Sonic. At least the animation in this sequence is really nice. Super Sonic defeats Egg Emperor super easily, and Chaos Control starts, which will teleport all of Sonic's friends back to their world. Sonic and Chris say their goodbyes, and it's supposed to pull at the heartstrings, but I feel nothing due to their lack of interaction. One thing that's a little different between the two versions is that in the Japanese version, Sonic's voice takes on a more serious demeanor here, whereas in the English version it's still the same goofy voice. Chris cries, oh so sad, isn't it? Sonic disappears and it seems the show is over. Except not. You see, we still have another 26 episodes to go, so the show can't end here. So for some reason, Chaos Control didn't send Sonic and Co. back to their world. It just brought Angel Island to the human world for some reason. I will admit, Eggman finding the mural depicting Chaos is a nice way to set up the Sonic Adventure adaptation. And that's where we end for now. So this is the major problem I have with Sonic X. It simply doesn't have enough plot to fill a full 52 episodes. The main goal was to get all 7 Chaos Emeralds so the characters could get home, and that goal was pretty much accomplished in episode 26. But we still got half a series to go, so the characters for some reason didn't go home. Chris didn't start off too bad, but by this point he's getting quite insufferable because he always has to save the day in some fashion, and his angst about how his life will be lonely and miserable without Sonic doesn't hold any weight. And this isn't going to get better, it's going to get much worse. But what do we do now that we've got half a series to go and we basically wrapped up our main plot? Where is Shadow? He's been heavily advertised as a major part of the show and he hasn't shown up yet. Well, here's how they solved that little problem. Let's just adapt the storylines of Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. We'll cover that next time. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please hit that like bell and subscribe button. It really helps me out. See you next time.